Wizards of the Coast has put the pedal to the metal, and they are always constantly reprinting cards. And I'm sure you're wondering, when are we going to get that reprint of Mana Crypt? But we're just going to talk about the most expensive commander cards that we need a reprint of. Maybe these are cards that if you're holding on to them, you shouldn't be, because eventually they are going to get a reprint.
Let's do a video.
Highest level of gratitude to our patrons who power the channel through Patreon. Check out the Patreon link in the description to learn about monthly giveaways, VIP Discord access, and even our official playmat. Hello and welcome to the day.
Thank you for spending your time with us.
I'm Jake.
I'm Banned in Legacy. Welcome back to another episode of also Banned in Oathbreaker. Mana Crypt is a 0 mana artifact. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It is the most needed reprint right now in Commander. Honestly, Jake and I thought that we were going to see it this year. Surely if it's not here, then it will be there. Surely if it's not here, then it will be there. That has been our ongoing conversation with this card, and Double Masters number 361 is the last time we got to see it. This remains lowest cost right here, Eternal Masters. You'll see it highlighted as we're going through cards today here on Scryfall. $170 for the Eternal Masters version of Mana Crypt. And it is the top of the list. Before I throw it over to my buddy Jake, I want to tell you about this list. This is every card that is legal in Commander, the cheapest versions of those cards legal in Commander, non-reserve list, not from any set called Portal, which throws off the numbers. Ask us about it on a Wednesday stream if you want to talk about Portal. And it doesn't have any judge cards either. So this is all cheapest versions of these cards that you're seeing, but in order from most expensive to least expensive. So you're not going to see any like crazy treatments on here, unless, like in the case of Sheoldred, that is the cheapest treatment.
Yeah, and you might be looking at that Imperial Seal and you're like, wait, the borderless or the full art Imperial Seal is the cheapest one? Yeah, that's how it kind of shakes out, you know, especially with old scarce cards like this. You could see that the borderless is just honestly just a few cents cheaper than the regular frame version of the card. But yeah, just talking about Mana Crypt, which is a card that we absolutely need a reprint of. The last time that we got a reprint of this card was July 8th of 2022. That's when Double Masters 2022 came out. You could kind of look at Mystery Booster Retail Edition as being a good moment where this card got a reprint as well. But yeah, this is one of the most impactful, most powerful CEDH players want it because it's extremely sweaty. It costs 0, and you're getting a Soul Ring's worth of mana when you tap it, and the 3 damage doesn't really matter because you're just trying to power things out as fast as possible. And in Commander, your life total's a resource. But this is a card that we absolutely need a reprint of, and it looks like Wizards of the Coast, if they don't reprint it this year, they're putting over a year of time in between this card getting a reprint, which I think is honestly important if we're trying to preserve any sort of equity in modern non-reserve list cards. But yeah, Mana Crypt is a card that we have needed a reprint pretty much ever since it gets reprinted. We're like, keep reprinting it, please. It's also mythic. You're going to see a lot of cards on this list that are mythic, and we talk a lot of the time about mythic price protection, which is because of that mythic rarity, these cards do not go through as much of a correction as rares, especially in this day and age of constant treatments, constant variants, overprinting. You know, when a card gets a reprint, like Joel was talking about the Sheoldred, how many reprints do we get of it, Joel? Like 8.
Yeah.
So
well, when it gets a single version like this, this is 1 set's worth of Sheoldred here. And wow, I do believe that this treatment here was featured somewhere else as well. It's hard to keep up with nowadays. But yeah, 8 different treatments, and the cheapest one, $61.95.
And that just speaks to how powerful that card is. But yeah, you'll see some rares on this list. You're going to see some mythics. But Mana Crypt, when are we going to get the reprint? This is a card that if you're holding extra copies and you're like, Mana Crypt is going to the moon, you're in for a harsh reality because it will get a reprint and the price will adjust. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, not financial advice, but a lot of these cards, and we'll kind of go through these individually quickly and tell you where we think they fall on the reprint scale. But a lot of these cards could be considered to be just before midnight on that reprint clock. And when it gets to midnight, we see the reprint. And so those are not cards, not financial advice that you want to be holding if you're not using extra copies, because you could flip them and then reinvest into lower value stuff that is lower value right now, might go up over time if that's the only game you're playing. But if you've got your extra Mana Crypt, because last time you picked up 2 during the last reprint window, now's a good time. Sell those, get the Lord of the Rings decks, for example. That's the kind of thing that we are not financially advising, encouraging, but not encouraging. You know what I'm saying?
What we are encouraging is that eventually the moon is going to crash into the earth, and you don't want to be holding these copies when the moon crashes into the earth. It's a Majora's Mask reference.
High power, zero cost artifact. Got it. Yedwin Ifrit. Next up, look at this one. This one says flip a coin on it, Jake. Look at this one, Jake. Only ever appeared in Arabian Nights, Jake. Non-reserve list, one single printing ever, was not reprinted when they printed an entire deck around coin flipping. And so you know why that price is the way it is. This
Arabian Nights is so, it's like, this was a set that came out in 1994. So, you know, when you think, I'm pretty sure Arabian Nights came out in 1994. So that's 1 year after Magic the Gathering came out. And so when you have a set that is that old, that's before their production costs really ramped up. So that was 1993, actually.
December 17th, 1993. Learn your Magic history, noob.
My bad. But yeah, when you think about that, you know, this was before they had the player base that they have now.
Right.
So old cards like this that have super few printings, even when they're jank, I'm telling you straight up, 3 red card is jank. But there are some people that want it.
The coin flip decks want it. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that niche deck wants this card. Lots of decks, lots of niches want a giant 13 for 13 that has a cost reduction built in. You get some extra turns and
Mindslaver type effect.
Yeah, exactly. Not an extra turn on you, but that player's turn. And then you're also flying, trample, and protected from instant removal. It is only ever been printed. This is scarcity play, $80. Third most expensive card for the base copy. Again, make sure we're following the caveats here. You're understanding the discussion we're having. I don't need anybody coming in and being like, the secret layer version of that card is more expensive. Yeah, we get it. We're talking about the lowest value version of this card that you can pick up. $80 for Emrakul. I mean, it's only a matter of time, right? We're going to see Eldrazi
100%.
again in the story. And this will then reappear as a set within a set, or a secret layer, or some kind of box topper, or we'll see Emrakul again.
One thing that's kind of interesting to me is, you know, if you take out the Efreet here from this list, what do we start to see? We start to see a bunch of colorless cards, things that can go in any color deck. We also start to see most powerful and best card color in Magic, black, right at the top with Imperial Seal and Shieldred the Apocalypse. You know, that just kind of shows how powerful that color is. But when you see that it's a bunch of colorless cards at the top, that kind of shows you, wow, you know, those things that slot into any deck, what a concept. Well, those are the cards that go to the top.
And it's very telling that 3 of the top 5 are 0 mana artifacts. People will work around free things that provide resource, which is the hardest thing to get your hands on in this game. These 3 things all providing free resource, yeah, we'll take them. We got,
I mean, Mox Opal. Let's talk a little bit about Mox Opal really quick, because this was a card that when it got banned in Modern, people were like, oh, that card's just going to bottom out. Nope.
Whoopsie.
Legacy still wanted it. And then also, you know, it does have Vintage, but the Commander player, because artifacts are so popular in Commander, And also mythic price protection. This card has been mythic ever since it came out, because one thing Wizards of the Coast knew about in Scars of Mirrodin times was that 0 cost artifacts that tap for mana were good. So this, I mean, this is essentially at this point, this is just a card that has withstood the test of time. It's extremely good. We know that artifacts are extremely good. So no surprise that this one kind of defied reason and stayed expensive.
No, well, and this card, like the next one on the list, will be used to sell an entire set just by itself. Commander Masters, we just saw this reprinted at time of shooting this. We're shooting this right at the beginning of September in 2023. Jeweled Lotus has just been printed. $73. That's about as cheap as we've seen it. It was in the 60s for a little while after Commander Legends, I do remember, and then it started jumping very quickly. Hit that $80 mark, hit that $90 mark, hit that $100 mark, kind of sat around that $100 mark. That's what my price memory is for this card. $73 though, still the 5th most expensive card on this list. And Jake, I think that is
just
really
reprinted.
I'm telling you,
just reprinted.
So yeah, you got to think
4 versions. You got a textured, you got the frame break, you got the etched, and you got the normal. And the normal has the foil version as well. So
right,
this is them pumping a ton of it.
But look,
a ton of it.
That's I'm saying that I don't think this card is going to be in the most expensive for long. It is, however, a 0 cost mythic, and they've done a good job of protecting that in the past. And so it's very likely that this one goes a little bit further down for the base copy only. That's all I'm talking about. I would say that this has a little bit further down to go, but not too much. Because this is the iconic piece of that set, I don't think it's going to follow the typical fall for 6 months that literally almost every card else in the set will follow. This one could potentially sort of zig when everybody zags normally. So just watch this one if you're trying to pick up your copy still, and know that this one won't be seen for a while again if rhythms of WotC stay typical.
Well, let me just say this before we move on from the Lotus. November 20th, 2020 was the first time that we got this card.
Yeah.
So
Commander
we
Legends.
are just now getting it. Yep. In Commander Legends, November 20th, 2020. We're just now getting it in 2023. So the question becomes, is that going to become kind of like for big cards like this, for the Mana Crypt, for the Jeweled Lotus, are they going to start putting 3 years in between? Maybe that's going to be what they do. Maybe we get the Mana Crypt. Maybe we don't get Mana Crypt next year. Maybe we get Mana Crypt the year after that. And you have your list of extremely expensive cards start to dwindle. Wizards of the Coast does have to think strategically. Where do we put them? How do we, like Joel was talking about, use Jeweled Lotus to sell a whole set? Well, they waited a long time from November 2020 to get it going.
They waited a longer time to get it going with Imperial Seal.
Way long.
But
jeez,
now we probably will see this at some decent cadence as a mythic in premium sets. Double Masters 2022 borderless version. These are really similar, y'all. We hit refresh on this page right before we started, and it replaced this version, or it replaced this version with this version. And so, I mean, you can see they're 5 cents off from each other. Either one of these around the same cost. People just like what they like. But as a mythic, just printed in 2022, we're just over a year off of this set at this point, and this one is still holding a spot up in the top here. But and that's kind of the point of this video, Jake, is that they are overprinting the crap out of stuff, and so some of the stuff that they are reprinting is staying at the top. But a lot of the typical things that we knew, like Imperial Seal, when it did get a reprint, even though Imperial Seal kind of defies this trend, is that it just needed that one reprint to really tank the cost of it.
And if they did it again, like if they put it in the next set, you would cut that price in half.
Right.
So it's like they really do need to wait. They need to give it some time before they do it again.
Painter's Servant, this one has just been sort of at the top of these lists for a while because it hasn't been really truly printed since Shadowmoor. We've got the Judge gift card version this year that is a little cheaper if you do want to get a special version. Again, base copies are what we're looking at. We're not including the Judge gift cards. But This one is one, I mean, look, it's banned in Oathbreaker. It's got some like weird preventative gameplay lines that you can use it for, but it's not
a combo piece.
Right. I feel like this is one where if it reprinted, it would go super fast, way down the charts.
Yeah, because there are players that just want to do degenerate things with it, but that's not the main player base in Commander. Sure, there are some people that would want to pick up a Painter's Servant, but if they do reprint it, and hopefully they don't reprint it as a mythic, and I know some of you are going to be like, well, they did reprint it as a mythic in the Kailadesh Invention set. No, that doesn't actually count. The card is not a mythic level card. It's a very niche ability that players have figured out how to break in order to make it degenerate in very specific kinds of decks. But yeah, if they reprint it at rare like they should, when they do reprint it, you're going to see a big adjustment on Painter's Servant. And I'm sure that they're just trying to figure out where they want to put this one.
Shout out to the person that's one person in the entire world, but they've got a whole notebook of Painter's Servants from Shadowmoor, and they're just waiting to flip these cards because they knew when they saw it as a rare, they were like, one day my prince will come and it will be me selling all my Painter's Servants.
Advice to them: if it got a judge printing, it's probably about to get a reprint.
Not
so be
financial
careful.
advice, but sell. Not financial advice, but sell. Next up,
my God.
This card is very pushed by the card. The price of this card is, well, the card is pushed itself, but the price of this card is pushed by the fact that it is dominating pretty much every format it's legal in. That's an exaggeration. It's everywhere in Standard still. This whenever rotates out.
It's Pioneer, it's Modern.
Right.
It's a brutal card.
If they decide they want to just keep pushing the Standard season and keeping this Standard legal, it will hold price. I would be interested to see what happens when, you know, the Standard players don't need multiple copies of this and want to flip off all but one and keep one for their Commander deck. But, you know, it's a Sheoldred. It's a good Praetor. We've seen the Praetors at the top of these lists before when we do these videos. We do these videos every 6 months to a year, and this one is up here right now. We'll see where it's at in a year or two based on it being in Standard or not. We got some weird ones here. Mindbreak Trap. Jake, this is this is a scarcity play. It's only ever been in Zendikar there, and this is mostly played in Vintage, right? So it's not even like really driven by Commander. I would say that some CEDH player might want to do this and try and get a Storm deck caught off guard, but I don't even see where else it's really useful.
Well, you know, where it's useful is like, because in Vintage you're playing like Lotus and Mox, and you're going to have turns where you very easily cast, you know, 3 or more spells.
Right.
That's where this card really shines. I could see it shining in something like Legacy, where you're casting tons and tons of brainstorms and cantrips and that kind of thing, but it's just really in those formats that use a lot of the 0 cost spells, where it's very easy to be like, gotcha, with the Mindbreak Trap. But yeah, it's a card that just needs a reprint. Very specific card. As you can see, not many decks want this.
No.
Not many formats want this. It's very specific.
Big control deck there, big control card there. Jake, I thought this would get down into the $25-$30 range, and I messed that one up. But
that mythic price protection got you on that one, Joel.
Yeah, it worked. They really did a good job of maintaining the value of this card. Turns out, even if more are available, there's enough of a market for this card that they'll just soak them all up and it'll basically stay the same price. And we got 2 versions of this card, 3 versions of this card when it was reprinted. So, you know, Dockside Extortionist is a nimble little goblin pirate that can also dodge price gouges. Wow, they can just maintain the value of this card so well.
Yeah, it's just the power creep. You know, you really can't power creep Dockside Extortionist. If you think you can power creep Dockside,
knock on wood. God, Jake.
I just want to hear in the comments how someone could power creep Dockside Extortionist. And while you're in the comments, consider subscribing. Most of you who watch the channel are not subscribed. And if you are enjoying this video, if you've made it this far and you think you're going to be back for another video in the future, hit us with that subscription. It does a lot more than just recommend you the next video.
It puts positive energy out into the universe, and everybody needs that. Just like everybody needs Chalice of the Void. Well, that is if you're playing Modern recently. This card has seen a little resurgence in buzz. I've seen a lot more people talking about Chalice of the Void recently. This isn't really a Commander-driven price here. Yeah, it's like a Modern-driven price. It hasn't been reprinted truly since, I mean, I guess Time Spiral Remastered, we would say, is the last really meaningful version of this one. Masters 25 before that, it being in a regular set. But, you know, Mythic here, Mythic as an invention, Rare twice, Mythic, Judge, Promo Online, and then the special slot for your Time Spiral Remastered set. So this is one where this is a rare. It'll stay a rare, and if it gets a good reprint in the way that cards get reprinted now, having 3 or 4 versions, I could actually see this one being upshifted to Mythic just to sell a set. Jake, what do you think about this one?
This is the kind of card that for me, it's like, I think it'll stay a rare, but it's a rare that WotC knows that people want 4 copies of, 3 or 4 copies, because it's a big sideboard card.
Well, and they've shown in Masters 25 that they're willing to up it just to sell a set.
So it probably would, if they did reprint it, you know, outside of Time Spiral, then yeah, it probably would come back as a Mythic just because of that playability. Even though when I look at this card, I'm like, that is not a Mythic level card to me.
Right.
It's good. It's amazing against certain decks. It will absolutely 1,000,000% shut down a Boggles deck if you just put 1 and 1. You know, it's like, I've played against it. It's a backbreaker of a card, but it's only good in specific situations, which is why it's a sideboard card. So I would hope it doesn't get reprinted at Mythic, but we've seen that they've already done that, so it very well may.
Yeah, this is another one. Speaking of cards at Mythic, we saw it in the Slivers special deck. We saw it in a Secret Lair drop, but since Scourge, it has been a while. Scourge was 2003. So that being the last legitimate one, other than you could have bought it that one time when the Secret Lair was for sale, and the amount of push that they're giving Slivers recently, they will really just be like, oh, y'all like Slivers? Cool, we're gonna print them until you're tired of them. This is one that they haven't yet, and so I know that this one will sell some set, something in the next year or two with the amount of Sliver love that we've been getting. But this is now, look, the top of the list up here. This is the Sliver legend that has retained any value whatsoever.
That's right.
Look at those little pokers there. Jake, this is one I thought we were going to see in Eldraine right here.
Yeah, Cover of Darkness is just a card that was kind of a sleeper for a long time, and then when people discovered it, it just sent the card in price because it's an old card. It doesn't have a lot of there aren't a lot of copies of it out there. You know, this goes back to Onslaught, which is shout out to the set that brought us the Allied Fetch lands for the first time.
Ew.
It's just a card that is very good, and it gives all your stuff fear for a very cheap price. Yeah. One black, one other.
It's a nice little surprise you can drop down once you've developed a full board and you're ready to attack. And so creature type decks are very much wanting this, especially, I mean, obviously only if they're in the color black, but if you're a creature type deck and you've got black in your color identity, this is one that you want to seriously think about obtaining a copy of. We're getting down towards the $50 range. You can see here Ancient Copper Dragon, our mythic dragon from Baldur's Gate, that is a $53 card for the base copy. And we've got, look at all these versions. Just throw a dart and pick a version, and it was only ever printed in one set.
That's right. They just know, they're like, okay, we're gonna get a ton of copies of this card out whenever we print it, and that's kind of been how things work since Throne of Eldraine came out. Yeah, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. This is just right in the middle of the variant era, but this is also a card that is hugely popular because of the treasure mechanic, and because that mechanic is so popular and so powerful, and also it's a dragon. Which dragons, I mean, people love big, beefy dragons. It's part of Magic. So yeah, this card, I'm not surprised at all.
Part of the piece, I think, driving the price too is the fact that Baldur's Gate was less purchased and less opened and sort of looked down upon in the moment because people were misled by the name of it. And I think in retrospect, people actually have a lot of fondness for that set. And they're obviously powerful pieces where, you know, without looking at the sales data, I think that could have been a driver on that, but it was always naturally, like you said, going to be the most expensive card in the set. Jake, we saw this one get reprinted as a box topper, and this is actually a good look at what those box toppers that were some of the most desirable in the Tales of Middle-earth set are doing to the price of this card, which is not a ton.
Yeah, because they've Wizards of the Coast has upshifted it. See, they make us think there with that list version that they're just reprinting the old one from back in the day, but really, you can see with the Time Spauber remastered, they have upshifted it to Mythic, and now we see that that's kind of where this card is going to live. But yeah, this is another one of those cards where it's just good. It's just generically a pretty good card, and I mean, it's scarce. It's still pretty scarce.
It is,
because those box toppers aren't actually a reprint. You don't really think about the box toppers as being a reprint because you can only find them in that one slot, not in the normal set.
Yeah, exactly. You can kind of see some new hotness here poking its little nose into the top of the range. Cavern of Souls, though, we wanted to get down to their $40. Jake, we've talked about this card at length on the channel. We had a whole video dedicated to this card because it kind of holds a special place in MTG Finance. But that was a video that talked about this card at $50, and now it's at $40. Yeah, this card is it's one of these premier lands. When we have sets like Tales of Middle-earth and we need special lands that we want to put a Lord of the Rings skin on to make it fit the set, or if we want to use Cavern of Souls as a box topper in Zendikar Rising, if we want to use it as a way to have a really spicy etched card or a full art card, Cavern of Souls is one of these cards that generally a lot of players gravitate toward. Certain decks want 3 or 4 copies of it, but some commander decks just, some people just want it for commander where you only need the 1 copy. But yeah, ever since it was printed in Avacyn Restored, people were like, wow, that card's really good. When it enters the battlefield, I get to choose a creature type. It already floats for 1 generic mana, but I also have this other ability that's add 1 mana of any color to my mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. Also, that spell can't be countered, so it hates the counter deck. It hates blue magic. Yeah, this is no surprise that this card has stayed expensive, but we can also see that even the most expensive cards, if you print them enough, is going to do something to the price, which is what we're seeing is Double Masters 2022. That one has started to trend down, and then Avacyn Restored has gotten down to the $40 range. If they did another meaningful Cavern of Souls reprint in like one of the next upcoming sets, I think we might see Cavern at $30-$35. Yep, it really is indicative of the reprint wave we are in the middle of right now.
The velocity of reprints.
They've got to do something to keep selling sets, and they are just not trusting themselves to pull in eyes and pull in dollars with brand new designs as much as they used to, unless they slap the name Legends or Horizons or Masters on the box and charge more for it. So like I said, you can see some new hotness in here. Eye of Ugin, this is a card that's been banned in Modern. It's very powerful in the very niche decks that want it, around $40, but you can kind of see here. We just
had that Eldrazi layer that came out. So when you have something like that happen, you'll have a card like this pop up in price. Talk about a card that flatlined and then exploded out of nowhere.
Yeah, so if you look at the chart here, this was hovering around a $10 or $12 card. And then right when we found out there was going to be a colorless precon deck, what happened?
Absolutely going to the moon. But some people will call that a shooting star pattern, where it just goes absolutely up and then goes into the sky. When this card gets reprinted, it will come back down to earth. But this just goes to show that, you could have a card that you think is like, oh yeah, it's bottomed out, it's an $11 card forever. And then one commander deck. This speaks to the MTG hive mind. This really does kind of go to show that, when something new, the new hot thing comes out, that can absolutely send a card right out of nowhere.
So your cheapest version there's the rare from Modern Masters, but yeah, that's in a short-term bounce right now, and if that's been taking up space in your binder, it's a good time to throw that one into something else that you might want a little bit more. Yeah. Keep these in your mind. We also have Orcish Bowmaster's Fury with new hotness, Sword of Fire.
Those are 4-ofs. Fury is such a powerful card because you can evoke it and deal 4 damage as you choose. Brutal. Yeah. Brutal card.
Absolutely brutal. Sword of Fire and Ice, really good, really high playability. Look, these are the ones you need to keep in your mind, y'all. These are the ones that they will use to sell sets. They will try and you know, be like, oh, the value of this secret lair is 400,000 million bucks, man. Get over here and buy it. And it's just going to be based on like Painter's Servant that they'll throw in a secret lair at some point. So some of these got real value behind them because their playability is just off the charts. I mean, cards that have just been reprinted, we'll see this go down, but this was just reprinted too in the top 10. So keep these in your mind. This is how they'll get you. This is how they'll try and push their sets.
Shout out to Joel, who is a Scryfall wizard. We are going to go ahead and put this exact link in the description. If you made it all the way to the end and you're like, how did he get that list of cards put together? We're just going to put a link to this Scryfall, essentially the syntax, so that you can look at this specific list and get a better idea. You see the allied fetch lands.
I was going to say
here.
First land, like, Polluted Delta. Well, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
We got Cavern of Souls and Eye of Ugin and Gemstone Cavern. I don't know what I'm talking about. But first fetch land in here is our copy of Polluted Delta. Back from Onslaught, is that right? Is that what that symbol is?
So Onslaught,
no, that's Khans.
And then Khans of Tarkir was the very next reprint that we got of this. Yeah, I mean, this is honestly a list that you should just stay familiar with. This should be a list where you're like, am I holding on to any of these extra cards that are very expensive? Well, this would be kind of like a pro tip, is like, look at that card, look at the last time that it was reprinted, and then say to yourself, you know, if I'm holding on to this extra card and the last time it was reprinted was like 2 or 3 years ago, Wizards of the Coast is probably going to reprint it, which means that you can sell that card and then you can rebuy it again later. Or if you're somebody who's holding something like an Eye of Ugin and that was sitting in a binder and you thought it was an $11 card, and right now, because of the new hotness, that card has gone up to $40, that kind of puts you in an opportunity, right? Where now you have an $11 card that became $40. You could trade that into something you really want. Take advantage of that window of time. Because if you take advantage of that window of time, you can trade up into a better card. You can make sure that you get the most out of your collection.
Look at that card. It's not even out yet. Beseech the Mirror hasn't even been released at the time of this video. That is a pre-order price. That should not be in this list. Get out of here, Beseech the Mirror. Base copy. Are you kidding me? Like and subscribe.